Hey, and welcome back to Tac-Com. Today we'll be covering my most played class, the Engineer. The Engineer spawns with a Nasher, an Enforcer, and the Repair tool, so they're pretty much useless when it comes to initial damage output. Most Horde runs will rely heavily on fortifications though, so for this reason, the Engineer is right up there with the Scout as one of the most important classes to have. The Scout brings in the money, and the Engineer spends the money, though I like to see it as more of an investment rather than just spending the hard-earned energy. So let's briefly review the skill cards and hop into some discussion of the tips and tricks for best managing your fort. As mentioned in the Engineer skill card video breakdown, the Engineer has a wide variety of card options. It really comes down to what type of base you wish to construct. There's a few no-brainer cards, like Repair Boost, but when it comes to most others, you need to pick the cost and health cards that best suit your needs. Arguably, the most effective way to complete a match is by upgrading the Fabricator to level 4 as quickly as possible. The team can then spread out with sentries and turrets, or salvos if that's more your thing. The process of recycling made this extremely quick, but TC was also quick to nerf that after our last batch of Horde Guides threw it off. No worry though, recycling is still a thing and it is still worth doing, just not as much so as before. As recycling is a core skill in managing energy fortification, let's take some time to break it down. I've got a 50% discount on Decoys, so at level 1 it will cost me 1500 energy. When it's destroyed, it now drops 25% of what you spent. This is different than at launch when it dropped a percentage, I believe 20% of the full price. So in my case, it drops 375 energy. When a scout picks that up, it stays at 375 because there is no bonus on fortification pickups. Now upon depositing, that's 600 energy. So in essence, I spent 1500, got a full 2500 health out of that decoy, and got 600 energy back. This means I ranked up my Fabricator by 1500 and only spent 900 overall. TC nerfed recycling in Rise of the Horde, but because of the upgraded skill cards, it's actually still pretty efficient. Basically, with recycling, you're purposefully letting things get destroyed in order to level up the Fabricator more quickly and more efficiently. Recycling is all based around percentages of spend, so it doesn't really matter which fortification you use. For turret-heavy strategies, I typically use decoys, as they do a great job distracting enemies while you mow them down from the turret. You can also bunch them up pretty tightly, which is nice because you're going to be buying a lot of them. Recently, I've been using a lot of sentries for fortification recycling, as they not only give you the bonus distraction, but they also deal damage. I wouldn't recommend using anything other than sentries or the decoys though, as the other fortifications don't really draw enough aggro or have any other benefit for recycling. While I wouldn't necessarily recommend them for a recycle chain, that doesn't mean that they aren't worth recycling occasionally if the health is low. Let's go back to the decoy example. Remember, everything is based on percentages, so it doesn't matter what I use for the example, I just happen to have the decoy numbers at the top of my head. With a decoy, if it was down to say 1 health out of 2500 left, I have two options. Either A, I could let it die, thus giving me the 600 that we discussed earlier, and I could buy a new one. So basically giving me a new one for a 900 net loss. Or B, I could repair it, which would actually cost me closer to 225 energy. Obviously in this case, I would want to repair it. For the most part, repairing is going to be more cost effective now. This wasn't the case pre-Rise of the Horde. While repairing is often more cost effective now, there's also that unquantifiable benefit you get for leveling up your Fabricator faster when recycling. So it's really a judgment call. I had a tool that could calculate this for any fortification, where you could input your cards and it would tell you, should you repair or should you recycle. But after TC updated a bunch of things, all of my values got thrown off and it just really wasn't worth updating, so sorry. But it's not too hard to figure it out on the fly. A general rule of thumb is that if you have a health bonus on, you're better off recycling. If not, you're probably better off repairing, but recycling never hurts. Okay, that's enough of energy management. Let's talk a bit about the configuration and managing of a base. Our old Insane Horde guide is a bit dated, but the fundamentals of picking a base location still hold true. Long paths with limited access points are your friend. Most teams will let the Engineer place the Fabricator, and there's a few things to consider when doing so. First, don't forget that you can use it as cover. Some areas on the map don't have much natural cover, but adding a Fabricator will be more than enough to give the necessary protection. Second, you don't need it to be in the back of spawn. Many people place it way behind them to stop enemies from spawning behind them. Sure, that works, but the spawn block radius on most maps is quite large. You can pretty comfortably move it out to a more functional location and still block the people coming in behind you. The third main tip for placement is to ensure that it's easily accessible by the scout and the engineer. Nothing is more annoying than not being able to get to the fab each round when you're trying to deposit or purchase something. The fourth and final tip for placement is to ensure that it's in a somewhat safe space if you plan on doing special strikes. This may mean moving the fab for boss waves if you plan on doing a lot of strikes then, or even making sure that at least one side of it is near cover in case you need to do a team revive. When navigating the fabricator menu, you are quite exposed, so just keep that in mind and try to keep people safe. When placing the standard fortifications, most things come down to angles. Sentries are pretty easy, as the angles are shown on the map. I like to put them near corners, and I line up one of the angles with one of the sides of the wall. Turrets are more difficult as they don't actually show you the angle on them. Don't just face them straight down the line towards the enemies. Look at this setup down low on Foundation, which by the way is actually a pretty good setup once you get used to it. With these turrets, people like to face it directly out, but your angles are quite limited. Instead, turn them at a slight angle. Now when you get on, you're able to reach multiple doors and assist when needed. Weapon lockers? Well, obviously just keep these safe and out of the line of fire. Decoys? I try to put these in a place where I have a clear line of sight to them, but at the same time I want them in a place so that enemies can't see them without seeing me. That's rarely possible, but try to get it as close to this as possible. Basically, it stops them from being able to camp out of sight and just constantly shoot at the decoy. Another thing about the decoys is it's nice to put one right outside of your base for a boss wave in case you get a snatcher. The snatchers love these things, and it keeps them off of you for a while. Fences are nice for blocking enemies and slowing them down. I typically try to place these in entrances around the base, but we'll try to keep them a safe distance from the rest of the fortifications. You don't really want a tracker or something exploding on a fence and taking out a sentry or turret with the splash damage. At the same time, I want to make sure that fences are visible. You don't want an enemy just pounding away at a fence without you being able to do anything about it. In fact, that's true for most fortifications. Try to ensure that a sentry, or a turret, or a teammate always have coverage. A nice trick when it comes to fences is the V formation. Not only does this distribute the damage a bit, which hopefully makes the fences last a little bit longer, but it also allows you to get better angles on the enemies. Let's use the old, well patched now, War Machine speedrun example. Placing a single or double fence here will block enemies, which is nice. But what if I did this with the fences? With this V formation, you can now see that we have better coverage. We cover the full side, and the enemies can come out a little bit further, thus giving us a better angle on them. Those are the basics of placement, but for a few more details, be sure to check out the fortification guides we put out a while back. The values in them may have changed slightly, but a majority of the info is still true. So now that we've placed the fortifications, how do we play out the rest of the match? Well, your job is to repair and upgrade pretty much. Remember, repairing doesn't upgrade your fabricator level, but upgrades and purchases do, so keep that in mind when doing the whole repair versus recycling trade-off. When upgrading fortifications, you'll want to start with whatever your strat is focused around. Typically, that's sentries or turrets, with fences normally being one of the last things to be upgraded. When upgrading those sentries and turrets, remember to wait until they're close to empty as far as ammo goes. If anything has taken damage, you'll be charged for it when you upgrade the fortification, which kinda sucks. But ammo is free when upgrading, so use that to your advantage. I mean, especially after the patches they had last year, ammo is crazy expensive now. The last thing I'll cover here is what should probably be the last thing any engineer considers, and that's the weapons you're holding. Once I have the base figured out, I normally look to trade out my weapons, as they are pretty much useless. Typically I'll grab a lancer, or something else to put out a steady stream of damage. Then I'll look to grab a boom, torque, or drop shot. That is, once the heavy already has theirs. I don't really use it much, but it's always nice to have in your back pocket for those oh crap moments or for a boss wave. As I said, engineer is my most played role, but I rarely sit down for a full 1 to 50 run nowadays, so I'm bound to have forgotten something here. Be sure to leave us a comment below. Did I miss anything important? And how do you play as an engineer? Also be sure to check back all week, as we'll be putting out more Horde class guides. If you found this helpful, be sure to drop it a like and subscribe to keep up to date with our content. I'll catch you all next time, and thanks for watching. Hey everyone, being this is our last planned set of Gears of War 4 Horde Guides, I wanted to do what I can to ensure that these are accurate. For that reason, I'll be pinning a comment to each of the videos with 3 things. 1, a link to a Reddit thread discussing Horde. 2, a link to a forum thread discussing Horde. And 3, a list of updates based on feedback. So please, if you disagree with something or if you want to discuss anything further, please reach out to me in any of the 3 places above or on Twitter. We're normally pretty good about responding, and I'll do what I can to keep these pinned comments updated. Note that these may not all be live as soon as the videos go up, but I'll hopefully have them together within a week or 2. Thanks again to everyone who's watched these videos, and I look forward to experiencing Gears 5 with you all next year.